Hey Truth Seekers, it's Nathaniel with another deck profile. Today I am reviewing Link, Hope, and Love. So you know that we have a Fellowship with Dinosaurs deck. So that way we focus on like Agape Sword and Conquer Sword, getting the Fellowship bonus for like 24 points for 4 power cards, and we do that multiple times. Well, this one doesn't do that. This one actually focuses on using the Harvest ability on Socro. So let me go ahead and, since you got the basis of that down, this deck is going to focus on drawing a lot of cards. So we use Link. Link says that after your draw phase, if you have no power cards in your hand, you may reveal your hand and search your deck for one standard power cards. This way, we only run the minimum amount of power cards in this deck. I have 3 Hope and 3 Love. There are some turns where I need to have 3 Hope in play, and there are other turns where I need to have 3 Love in play. And whichever one of these cards I need for that turn, I just keep the other one in hand. I usually just hold on to it after I've already established I have all my power cards in play, because that is just one more card in hand. So anyways, moving on, I'm going to put these over here, get them out of the way. And moving on to our equipment, I got 1 Scarlet Cord and 2 Pulse Chains. Scarlet Cord, I can attach it to an Animo, and I can either return that Animo to my hand, or I can discard it. If I discard that Animo and all cards attached to it, I can search my deck for 1 Animo with a Virtue Point power, Virtue Points low equal or less than the card I discarded. So, and Pulse Chain says the Animo to whom this card is attached cannot be activated, but it may be discarded anytime during your setup. So I use these cards to get rid of Animo I don't need in play anymore. It says once per turn, as long as this card is attached to an Animo in your small group, you may search your deck for up to 2 level 1 Animo and place them in your small group. So we use these cards to help search for Animo and get rid of Animo in our small group. Next up, we got Giant Killer and Pause Maws. Pause Maws prevents my opponent from playing a Simion for 1 turn, and Giant Killer lets me either reveal a Cine to my opponent from my deck, or it allows me to return a Mega Cine that I'm facing to its owner's deck. Next up, I got 1 Shake and Break. Shake and Break says I can return 2 level 1 Animo from my discard pile to my hand. This card, essentially, the way I read it is, says you play this card to get 2 cards from my discard pile to my hand. Because my goal is, when I'm in my score phase, is to have 8 cards in hand. And plus, I also like using Fairly in this deck and other Animo that have Fellowship bonuses that are level 1s. So Shake and Break helps me get those back. Since this is a draw deck, I got the Rich Fool, 3 copies of the Rich Fool. Draw the bottom 3 cards from the deck. Then I have Hidden Treasure. Hidden Treasure says I can place 1 card from my hand on the bottom of my deck. If I do, I may draw 3 cards. So this card basically says minus 1 card from my hand to draw 3. So overall, it pluses me 2 cards. This card says I minus 2 cards from my hand, so that way I can draw 3. So this card pluses me 1 card. So I'd much rather be using Rich Fool than Hidden Treasure, but there are certain cards I want to have in my deck when I go to play this. So Hidden Treasure helps me get those cards back into my deck. Moving on to Cines. We got Zapper King. It says your opponent may not play any level 1 Animo from their hand to smaller group next turn. Crasshopper says when played, your opponent reveals their hand. You select 1 card from their hand and shuffle it back into the deck. Wolf has the ability that if it's in my hand, I can choose to show it to my opponent, shuffle it back to my deck. If I do, I get to draw another card. And then I got Detestable. It has the action that says your opponent must discard 1 of their equipment cards that are in play. This helps me get rid of my opponent's Pulse Chains. Got Venomouth. It says ability, as long as this card is active, your opponent's Animo may not be activated in the same turn that they are added to or grown in your small group. And then we also got Fearcrow Mega. I usually don't like to use Fearcrow Mega because its action only affects Love Animo. And it says your opponent may not play, grow, equip, or activate any Love Animo on their next turn. But I have found out that as long as your opponent doesn't have Potpourris in play and you're playing against a love deck, this card might save your life. Venomouth Mega says action, your opponent may not activate any level 1 Animo on their next turn. And Fearcrow Mega Plus counts as defeating 2 Cines, but has the action that says your opponent may not play any cards from their hand on their next turn. Very powerful stuff. To keep it going, since this deck does draw a lot of cards, I have Hoof It to help me not deck out. It says ability, when this card's in your hand, you may choose to discard it. If you do, you may shuffle any 3 cards from your discard pile back into your deck. So this card is a card that I don't actually have to play. I can just use it kind of like a story card. Next, I have 2 Akinleo. So on my first turn, if I have Akinleo, I'm going to be grabbing a Love Power card. So that way I can activate my Akinleo, because its action says you may search your deck for 1 Faith, Hope, or Holy Spirit power and place it in your power pool. Akinleo has helped me set up the game several times, and I'm going to keep using Akinleo whenever there's love involved. Potpourri's ability. As long as this card remains in your small group, ignore the effects and actions of any Sinnies revealed to you. This card helps me avoid getting hit by this effect, along with Zapper King. So, of course, I'm going to run Potpourri's, and this is a love deck, meaning I do not have to get rid of it with Pulse Chains. I can actually activate this guy when I'm ready to. Because this is a draw deck, I'm going to run Servitude. Servitude has the ability, says I may draw 1 card for each Faith, Hope, or Holy Spirit Animo in my small group. That's a powerful effect, and also helps me fill up my hand. And I will use Pulse Chains and attach it to this guy, and just keep drawing with them every turn, and use Pulse Chains to grab the other Animo that I need. Next up, I mentioned Fairly. Fairly's a fairly good card. It has the ability, it says, apply the Fellowship bonus for this card as long as it activates in the same turn as another Animo, regardless of kind. So it is a Fellowship bonus for 8 with any Animo. So it can be another Love Animo, it can be a Hope Animo. But the main reason why I like this guy is because it is a Love and Universal. And I have a very special trick in this deck, which we got from the starter deck. So I'll share that in just a little bit. Next up, we have 2 Agape Sword. This Agape Sword says once per turn you may choose to discard a Faith or Hope Animo from your small group. If you do, search your deck for 1 Love Animo, reveal it to your opponent, and place it in your hand. And we also run Agape Sword level 2, which this Agape Sword has the action says your opponent no opponent may reveal a Sinny to you on their next turn. And it has a Fellowship bonus for 12. Now, this does not fellowship with dinosaurs, because you're going to see we have a different win condition other than just dinosaurs. But I have to admit, the Agape Sword is really good. And then we have Flow Ultra. Flow Ultra has a swap ability. It says you may discard it from your small group. If you do, search your deck for any 3 Animo, reveal them, and place them in your hand. Our combo is usually use Pulse Chains to grab Flow Ultra, so Flow Ultra can grab us things that aren't level 1. Then we have, since this is a draw deck, we have Hightail. Hightail lets us retreat into our deck. And you may choose to reveal it to your opponent and shuffle it back into your deck. If you do, draw 3 cards. So while this card's in your hand, it basically says -1 card to draw 3. So it basically equals out to being drawing 2 extra cards. So you see, I'm trying to keep some math going here. Next up, we have only 1 Schwimmer. This deck only needs 1 Schwimmer because there's only 6 power cards. If I see a Schwimmer, I'm going to use Schwimmer to go grab my Love. I'm going to use pay that Love to go to use Akinleo. So that way I can set up my power cards as soon as possible. Then we have 2 Daybeak. Daybeak is fantastic early game. He is not so great late game. He has the ability, says once per turn, as long as this card's in your small group and you have no cards in your hand, you may draw 3 cards. So, I don't have a good hand starting off with, and I don't want to keep those cards in my hand. I can go ahead and discard my hand, and then just use his ability. I have no cards in hand, I draw 3. But he also has this Fellowship bonus, which helps us out a lot, which is a 2, so he ends up becoming a 2 for 8. He does have that Universal cost where I shuffle back a Love Power card if I needed to, which I can use Link to go grab that back later on. So, Daybeak is very helpful. And then, we have Percy. Percy, when you play him from your hand, you get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, take 1, add it to your hand, and then return the rest in any order. This is a very important card because he basically, it's like -1 card and then +1 card, but then you get to set up your hand for next turn. And we run Percy level 2, which Percy level 2 is very important for this deck because he has the action that says you may search your deck for any 2 cards and place them in your hand. Shuffle your deck afterwards. Now he does cost 3. I have a way to make him cost 2, but he does cost 3. But his ability is worth it because basically says when I activate him, I get to add 2 more cards to my hand during the score phase. So if I'm at 6 cards and I activate him, I add 2 more cards in my hand, I'm at 8, so my So-Crow is now powered up to max. Okay, next up, we have the Red Letter Day So-Crow level 1. He says when this card is played from your hand to your small group, you may draw a card. Kind of like Percy, when I play him, I get to add a card, so basically I'm not losing cards in hand when I play him. I could have used the Fearless one, but that one requires me to shuffle a card back in my hand to draw a card, and basically I'm just trading out cards. And I like that Fear Crow for decks that need certain cards in their deck, but I prefer this one for decks that just need to draw really fast. Then we have So-Crow from Fearless. He has the Harvest action, which says, at the time this card is activated, it is worth 2 VP for each card in your hand, up to 16 Virtue Points max. So he can be a total of 16 if you have 8 cards in hand. So our goal is to get 8 or more cards in hand by our score phase and activate them. We can usually get that set up within 2 to 3 turns of the game. So then we're just ready to activate them all the time. And as long as we're able to do this Hoof It, Paul's Change, and Flow, we're going to be able to get a lot of access to a lot of cards very quickly. And so So-Crow is one of the main cards of the deck. And then we have Percy Ultra. Percy Ultra just has the ability once per turn, as long as cards in your small group, you may draw a card. I like seeing him early game because all I'm doing is I'm just letting him sit in my small group. First turn I play him, I'll draw a card, and that's plus 1 card after minusing 1. Next turn I'll plus 1 more, and I now he's plus me 1 card total in my hand because first turn he minused 1. Second turn he didn't minus me anything, he just plus me 1. So it's like a free draw as long as it's in play. And then finally, we have Mercifier Ultra. So I actually thought it was really cool because I saw the starter deck and I was like, oh my goodness, I already built a deck that uses this Mercifier. But he's like just a 1 of in the deck because, and quite frankly, I could make it a 2 of because I don't need to run him. I could use him. He's way cheaper to activate. But his ability is as long as this card's in your small group, you may remove 1 cost from your Animo. Meaning, this universal cost means that this guy is a 1 for 16. It means that he's a 2 for 10 that pluses me 2 cards. This guy's a 1. So what I'll do is I will also have Agape Soar. And I will activate Agape Soar. I will activate these 2. And then I will finish it off by activating him or him. And it just kind of just depends on the turn. So that way, this right here would end up being 2 for 24, which is ridiculous. And then I have 4 more power cards to play with. And I really like that, because then I can follow that up with, oh, you can't play a Cine on me. Or I can use this to get 2 cards. Or I can just activate the Mercifier Ultra and get 2 for 10. Overall, great value. So I'm going to bring this video to a close. This has been my Link, Hope, and Love deck. So in the meantime, Truth Seekers, keep learning virtues and defeating Cines.